This is Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. We're on PlayStation 5, taking a look at the three different modes that are present within the game. So we have a split three ways, but we will have some parts of the video where the comparisons are done two at a time, so that you could see about 50% of the screen for each of the particular options. And again, it's going to switch in and out throughout the video just so you can see that aspect in action. So these videos are a ton of work, so be sure to like the video so more people can check it out, and subscribing's awesome as well. So first off, I should note that the audio is coming from the middle screen. Just in case you're wondering, I thought the center screen made the most sense in this particular situation. On the far left, we have the performance mode. In the middle, and we have the fidelity mode. And on the far right, we have performance RT. So what we're getting here is actually a dynamic resolution scaling for each of the options within the game, and that is rather interesting to see. The middle option, which is fidelity, is on by default, and I personally would suggest going with the dynamic option, the dynamic resolution performance option, because, again, the one on the far left, because that one seems to look really good most of the time, and it feels very fluid and smooth to play. So we're getting, mostly 4K 60 on the far left, and in the middle it's a 4K 30 target, and on the far right it is basically the same as what is the resolution performance mode, but it's running with ray tracing effects on, so you should see some subtle effects such as like reflections and that being highlighted within the mode, which is kind of cool and just adds an extra sense of realism and style to the game. And like Miles Morales, which was a similar offering, I do think you could jump into the ray tracing mode and really see what next gen kind of little effects are all about. But just sort of the premium experience to me is that high resolution quality while also having that frame rate. I didn't really enjoy the 30 FPS option in this one. It felt a bit sluggish, but of course it's totally up to you. And we're starting with a cutscene, but you will be seeing gameplay. This is right from the start of the experience, so you're just seeing the first 13-15 minutes or so of the game. So here's the side-by-side, so you can see performance and performance RT beside each other to get an idea of the differences between the two. Just again with this being sort of an opening cutscene scenario, and we will be showing off gameplay side-by-side as well, so you can see that in action. So then we're going back to the three-way split again just briefly, before getting another segment that's more close-up so that we can change to performance and fidelity, with the fidelity having ray tracing effects and some improved density in the visual elements. And we get a bit of a switch over here as we go to our classic hero. Yep, well, heroes, I guess you could say, as we get to see a sort of really neat dynamic switch over to Clank in a second here, where I think the ray tracing kind of really comes a little bit more alive. Again, being on the far right there, and you'll see that here, just like some of the extra little touches to the armor. It's really quite cool, if that makes sense, to have that sort of thing. And it's neat that they were able to give us three different options, and Insomniac does an absolutely wonderful job, with the implementation of really using the hardware to its maximum potential here. And we're going to get to see. You should notice right there that there are some effects that seem to be slightly different between them. Some things in the backdrop going on, so that's kind of also neat to keep in mind as well when you are going to play this. But this is a really cool area, because this is a more of an open spot. Like, it's linear in what you're doing, but when you get to look and see glimpses of the outer world, there are a ton of things going on. There's mass crowds, there's all these balloons, there's fireworks, there's characters flying around, and I tried my best to keep it as perfectly synced up as I could, but during gameplay that's really hard to do, so you're gonna see it kind of get a little bit more widespread. And whenever there's like cutscene scenarios, I kind of reel it back in and get everything synced up again, just in case you are wondering, with things kind of going off the page and stuff like that, or off the wall with combat. So here we have again performance and fidelity, so you can see those two going up against one another, just in regular gameplay scenarios. And it just, the fluidity of 60 just feels so smooth compared to that higher resolution that's just at the lower frame rate. It just, to me, it seems like it's well worth little dips here or there in resolution quality, not in frame rate, but just to make sure that you keep that 60, I think it's definitely well worth it. And I think for a lot of people, your discussion should be whether or not you want the dynamic resolution at 60, or if you want the dynamic resolution at 60 with ray tracing. I think those should kind of be your primary, kind of decisions between the two, at least in my opinion. And again, you have to make sure that you change it, because by default it's going to be running at the 30 option in the menu, and you get that right before you kind of load up the game and get playing. You can of course switch on the fly, but it will require a restarting of the chapter for you to get the new mode kicked up. Now, when you do that, it doesn't seem to be that much of an impact on what you're doing, but just keep in mind if you're playing something and you're like, oh, I want to switch it up, that it could restart what you're doing, and the game will warn you as well, just on top of that, but I thought it was worth mentioning. So here's a good rail grinding section. Kind of looks pretty cool, but just, it feels a lot better at the 60. And I feel like I don't need to tell people that, but I just kind of really want to clarify that that's sort of like the way to go for it, in my opinion. So here we go. We've got a little bit of an anti-gravity type thing. You're trying to keep up on there and doing some shooting. As odd as it sounds, the far left one was my first go at the game, just my regular sort of playthrough run, and then as it progressed towards the right, those are my second, and then the third iteration goes at the game. If you're wondering about how fast I'm moving through certain scenes, it's because I have, better, I guess, memory of those ones, or just really it seems like the 30 FPS just is a lot slower, because this is not a sped up, right? Anyways, this is just also a really cool game as well. I know I'm specifically looking at the quality between the three different options here, so that you get the idea of them, side by side, looking good. But I just want to say that this is a very wonderful title. It's a lot of fun, and it's very, very well done. It's quite enjoyable. So we got performance and performance RT again. So you're seeing those ones kind of up against one another, and you should see how the ray tracing effects kind of just impact the game in, subtle but more realistic ways, which I think are kind of interesting in providing a more, natural type of world. And it is kind of a little harder to see that when you're in the action. I find that, you'd have to kind of, sometimes for ray tracing effects, you have to sit there and kind of be like, ooh, that's cool. Or, you have to be like, oh, this is interesting during like cinematics or something like that. Whereas regular gameplay, it might be a little harder for you to, pick out what effects are there. But it all seems to run quite well. All things considered, I think they're hitting their frame rate targets across the experience, whether you're doing like heavy action scenes or doing something that's a bit more like cinematic in nature. Because usually, your cutscenes and stuff are really well set, because, they're cutscenes, they're not something the players interact with, whereas regular gameplay, certain scenarios might pop up and cause issues. But yeah, no, it seemed to all be quite effective and efficient, and I just really enjoyed what this had to offer. It was a lot of fun. I have to say, they also did a really good job, across the experiences on, even if they weren't doing ray trace type effects, but, even working on, the shadow work in general in the game. You can see that across the characters, across the screens, the shadow work. Some of the reflection work is also really well done. The lighting looks nice across all of them. At least I think so. Like, just quality-wise, you can see, different changes in the fidelity of our lead characters there. But, you still get a really great next-gen looking game across the package. Like, this is one of the first games I've seen where I'm like, wow, this is, quite a leap in quality, where I'm genuinely impressed by what they had to offer across all three of these. It really is quite neat there to be able to witness that and see this in action, because it's been, a bit of a wait, but I'm quite excited, really just to have played this finally and gotten to it, and seeing where the next generation of Ratchet and Clank is headed, because this has always been a title that has been, with the PlayStation games for quite a while, almost the entire history of the platform, and we've gotten a lot of different Ratchet and Clank games, and you've always seen how the technology and the design of them has changed on entry to entry, but here it really is quite a spectacular showcase, and a great way to kind of almost kick off the generation, one might say. I know we're quite a bit after launch at this certain point in time, but still, this one really does kind of be like, hey, this is what we can do with the tech, this is what we're doing world-wise, because there's other really cool stuff that you're not even seeing in the opening here. You get a little tease of it at the end of this video, where it's like a little bit of a rift pull type thing, but I mostly just wanted to show off something that was spoiler-free, slightly easier for me to set up, because these, again, quite a bit of work to put together. and kind of showcase just what they're doing here with the tech, which I think looks wonderful. The sense of scale, the characters, the action. It's the game but it just feels expanded and greatly built outwards in comparison to anything they've done before with the series. I mean, it looked pretty good with the last gen version and got a bit of a bump up recently. They kind of increased the frame rate there a little bit ago to get people prepared for this one. But yeah, it really is quite a stunning looking title. It seems like quite an evolution over that one as well. And just like looking at the animation work and everything like that, it looks like an animated film basically in a game that you're playing. And we're getting ever closer to that perfection element of it. And that is really quite interesting to me. I'll quickly be going over what it actually says in settings for each of these particular options, just for full clarification. Performance, which is on the far left here. This is an alternate version of the 60 frames per second Performance RT mode, additionally removing ray tracing in favor of increased picture resolution. Then we have Fidelity, which is in the middle. This is a 30 frames per second mode with graphical fidelities like ray tracing, enhanced lighting, additional VFX, and increased scene density. It presents a 4K resolution picture. This is the default, as I mentioned. And finally, Performance RT, again, far right on this one. This is a 60 frames per second mode, which includes ray tracing. It presents a lower resolution picture with adjusted lighting, VFX, and scene density. But anyways, I think the game looks great. Once again, liking the video is fantastic. Subscribing is great as well. And I hope you enjoyed this look at Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. And there will be probably other coverage on the channel as well around this game, but just enjoy the rest of it. Some, more gameplay, quick side-by-sides, and everything like that.
Let's go! Put down the Dimensionator, Nefarious!
Put down the Dimensionator! Yeah, right. Today, you will see what losing feels like. Spoiler! It's exhausting! Hey! What did you do?
Whoa! What just happened?
We may have a slight problem.
The bridge is shot! There has to be another way across.
The rifts are reacting to the phase quartz in your glove. Try pointing it at one of them.
Yeah, this is definitely gonna come in handy.